Hey everyone, welcome back to Bald Prairie Real Estate. My name's Matthew. That's my trusted assistant, Matilda, and we want to educate you all about real estate. But today we're going to lay out a scenario for you. Imagine you have found the perfect investment property, and it's perfect because the profits are guaranteed and the property manager is going to manage all of it for you. It's hassle-free. You just have to sit back, collect that sweet, sweet rental income.
What you gonna do, Jerry? Show me the money! Congratulations, you're still my agent.
But what you don't know is that the property, you overpaid for it and it doesn't even exist. You got duped by absolutely everybody involved. And this isn't a made-up scenario. This actually happened right here in Saskatchewan. It might be one of the biggest real estate scams in Canadian history. I want to talk to you about the collapse of 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃. But before we get started, let's start off with another terrible joke. When I was a kid, my dad used to roll me down the hills in those really big tractor tires. Those were good years. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in a future episode of Bald Prairie Real Estate, put it in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe if you haven't already. The business plan that 𝗵𝗲𝗄𝗃 had was pretty straightforward. Go find an undervalued property, fix it up, flip it out, make profit.
That was easy.
And they would buy these properties typically in cash because often they were smaller or they were in terrible condition, meaning the traditional lending would have been a little bit more difficult on these specific houses. They would buy these properties in cash with the money they had got from their investors and offer these investors some pretty generous returns, often 10 or 15%. Any profits that 𝗵𝗲𝗃 realized after paying out the investors, well, that was theirs to keep. This core business plan was pretty straightforward and pretty good. They would go and they would find an undervalued property or possibly one that was in really poor condition, fix it up. The investors made money, 𝗵𝗲𝗃 made money, and they took a property that probably wasn't in a livable state and made it so that somebody else could buy it to live in it or somebody could buy it to rent it out. Overall, it's kind of a win-win for everybody. The second part of 𝗵𝗲𝗃's business was what they called their hassle-free landlord program. So they had all these investment properties they fixed up and they were ready to flip them out to investor, but these investors, they didn't want to manage the property, or maybe they were unable to manage it. So what they had was this hassle-free landlord program that was perfect for them. They would say to the investor, don't worry about managing it, lease it back to us. We will go out and we will find the tenant and we will manage the property for you. And we will guarantee each and every single month, we're gonna write you a check for that property no matter what. This is different than a typical property manager where they usually will take a percentage of the monthly rent they've collected as their fee. But 𝗵𝗲𝗃 did these guaranteed monthly rent payments to kind of sweeten the deal for these investors to encourage them to take on this program. And it works really good if absolutely nothing goes wrong. Spoiler alert, something went a little bit wrong. So if the business model that 𝗵𝗲𝗃 had was a good concept, how does this become a real estate scam full of fraud and lies? 𝗵𝗲𝗃 chose to operate in some very cheap neighborhoods. Now it's awesome because you can buy these properties, get in very quickly and cheaply because of the price, but it also means you're operating in less desirable and high crime neighborhoods. That means you're gonna have fewer people that want to buy in these neighborhoods because they don't want to live there. But also as an investor, when you buy this, you're now in these less desirable neighborhoods, meaning you're not getting A+ tenants. You're also probably gonna have higher ongoing costs for repairs and maintenance. Missed and late rent payments are also a very realistic possibility in these neighborhoods. This can all be overcome, but 𝗵𝗲𝗃 wanted to sweeten the deal for their investors, and that is why they guaranteed monthly rent for these investors, no matter what, whether these properties were vacant or needed repairs or they weren't getting the rent. 𝗵𝗲𝗃 was going to write the investors a check. And remember when I said that 𝗵𝗲𝗃 offered very generous returns for their investors? Well, not only are those returns really generous, 10 or 15%, but often they would guarantee to those investors they would get their money back plus that return no matter what, whether 𝗵𝗲𝗃 made money or not. And you should know when you're investing and flipping properties, it's not always guaranteed that you're going to make money. But 𝗵𝗲𝗃 always seem to find a way to find these properties and flip them out, have them appraised for more than what they paid for, plus what they invested in it. This should start to sound a little bit fishy because it is. And this is where things go from sounding a little bit fishy to a whole lot more like a real estate scam or fraud, because there are tons of reports of properties managed by 𝗵𝗲𝗃 through their hassle-free landlord program where these properties were left in derelict conditions and the investors were not told of this. And even in one case, a property had actually burned down and the investor thought this property was still there and generating money every single month for them. So at some point, 𝗵𝗲𝗃 goes from a good business concept to a business run through fraud and lies to one that completely collapses. And the fraud and the lies, as bad as they are, and people are probably going to go to jail over this, or at least face some significant penalties, that isn't what causes the collapse of Epic Alliance. In my mind, there's two things that become their undoing. The first is promissory notes, millions of dollars owed to other investors, and their hassle-free landlord program. The way this is set up is really what gets them in trouble. When you guarantee investors monthly rent checks, basically no matter what, you're gonna run yourself into trouble, because no property is going to be full all year long. There's gonna be some months where nobody's there to pay rent. But Epic Alliance had guaranteed these rent checks every single month, these investors. And at some points, they were running a 50% vacancy rate, meaning that half of the year, that property had no one in there to pay the rent, or half of the properties Epic Alliance was managing were unfilled. Now, I don't know many rental property owners that can manage properties and have them vacant for half of the year and not run into trouble. And when you're paying guaranteed monthly rent every single month, this is what got Epic Alliance into a lot of trouble and leads to their ultimate collapse. Because of these high vacancy rate, Epic Alliance was running into significant financial troubles, and they had to go to a third pool of investors and get what's called promissory notes, where essentially they say, loan us some money and we'll pay you back at some point. Typically, these were really generous interest terms. The investors were, for the most part, happy to give them money to do so. But of course, if you're bleeding cash from your hassle-free landlord program, you're gonna have trouble paying these back. And at one point, there was something like $10 million in unpaid promissory notes that Epic Alliance hadn't paid back to anybody yet. Then Epic Alliance just simply runs out of runway. They're unable to continue to get money from new investors to pay back the old investors. And at one point, actually, financial regulators ordered them to stop transacting and operating their business, but they ignored that, continued to try to keep the doors open. They pleaded for investors saying, we need millions of dollars just to keep the doors open. They were unable to do so, and so the company collapsed. This left about 700 properties that they currently had under management. They got turned right back to the investors, and over $200 million of investors' money essentially disappeared overnight. These investors that held these properties that they thought were guaranteed great rental income properties, well, they were finding out very quickly they weren't very good investments. So that is what happened, but what are the lessons or the takeaways that someone can learn from this so they don't get caught in this as well? The first lesson is physically go see the property, especially if you're buying in a market that you don't understand or you've never bought in before. If you're buying from out of province and you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy an investment property, what is the added cost to spend a few $100s or even $1,000 to get on a plane and go and see the property in person? You obviously wouldn't buy a property that doesn't exist because you would see that it had burnt down, but also you'd understand the market forces and the market dynamics at play in that neighborhood. You're going to make a better purchasing decision if you understand those things. The next takeaway is do your own due diligence. Yes, you're gonna have somebody on the ground that you believe and trust. They're gonna have your best interest in mind, but double check everything. Make sure those numbers make sense, that the values and the rents and all that stuff will line up, because you want a second person looking at this, that being you, the second check, to make sure this is a good investment. Because a number of these deals, if they had just taken a second look at it, they probably would have realized these purchases just don't make sense at all. You know that old saying that says, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is? That couldn't have been more appropriate than in this situation right here. So many of these deals were can't lose deals, guaranteed profits. Nothing in real estate investing is guaranteed. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. I found this Epic Alliance story really frustrating and fascinating at the same time. It was really interesting to see the timeline of events and the sequence of things going on, but also extremely frustrating because this type of stuff shouldn't happen. Bad actors like this with bad intentions and all of the additional really shady stuff that was going on just simply shouldn't happen. But it did. So I'm hoping that the result of this is a better process to ensure this doesn't happen again. Now, I enjoyed going through the research on this topic. If you want me to do this again on a different topic, maybe you have a topic you want me to cover, put it in the comments below. It's something I want to continue to do. But what I think you should do next is check out this video right here, which is my most recent Canadian real estate market update, or this video right here, which is what the YouTube algorithm says you should watch next on Bald Prairie Real Estate. As always, everyone, thanks very much for watching.